Next up, we have Christie.
Do you want to, I think the easiest way to move forward, sorry, Chris, pause your control. Easiest way to move forward, let's do the,
Just 1 second.
Can I get the copy of the CRS so I can send it to our?
She's like, we've blown up the copy machine. We
There's
really
both copies. I signed both of them because
There you
there
go.
was
You have
one
two
in the
copies.
file.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
you're good. Can we do the fire reduction grant paperwork first?
Okay.
And then go to the per diems. That one's going to take, I think, a little bit more discussion. This is going to be an easy. Hey, I'm not the reason for those grants.
Look at them signatures.
Look to your right.
I'll own that one. I will own that one.
In fact, you can allocate that duty to Commissioner Huff.
He has the pen.
I'm here.
There were a couple items on there that we were not 100% sure who should sign. There was a purchasing, I believe, and I haven't looked at this for a little bit, but there was a spot on there where it talks about the purchaser. So we didn't know if you wanted to sign for that or if you would delegate that to Chanda. And then I signed where I needed to, and I think we already had Jason sign where he needed to. But if you just want to sign all the spots, that will take care of it.
Any questions, concerns?
No,
As soon as we sign those, we can go to work.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve and sign the fire reduction grant applications as presented.
There's two. There's the Cottonwood and the Smith Gulch.
Have a motion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Do you want to do the next one while you sign? Or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. The next item on the agenda was to discuss travel and education expenses, and then also potentially per diem rate changes. And yeah, okay, so we'll start with that one. I did some quick research on per diem rates because those have not been updated for a while. It looks like currently Bannock County pays, in-state we pay a total of $38, out-of-state $46, and then higher out-of-state is $71. And there's a few exceptions within there. With the out-of-state, we include Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint, and then the higher out-of-state includes Sun Valley. And then there's a list on the back that we have random exceptions on that form. When looking at GSA, it looks like the standard rate has kind of increased to $54 for most areas. I printed out a handful of different areas, for example, in Idaho, and I'm not looking at the incidental, so I took those out. So for Boise, their rate is $69. Coeur d'Alene is $59. The standard rate within Idaho would be $54, and then Sun Valley would be $69. And then I pulled Washington, D.C., because that's a frequent place that you guys go. That's $74. And then I pulled a couple random other areas. I pulled Nevada. I pulled Texas. I pulled New Orleans just because we've had a few conferences there lately. And then I pulled Colorado. And kind of the gist of the rates that I came up with was a $59 to $69 range. The one item that we need to take into consideration is if we pay a per diem rate higher than the GSA rate for whatever area it is, that becomes a taxable fringe.
Mm-hmm.
And for our office to track that would be a nightmare.
Yep.
So that's how we originally established these rates, is they were conservative enough that we should never have to go in and tax someone. The other option we have for reimbursements of meals is to do actual receipts. But if we were to do that, then I'm not sure how you would want to deal with the amount that people charge. You could have people that decide they want to go to the most expensive place for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Right now, we have a same-day travel policy where if someone goes out of town for the day, you guys asked that they keep the rate the same as or close to what the per diem rate is. We've always done per diems just simply because it's easier. You don't have to deal with actual receipts.
So I'd take your per diem rate then. You said, so Idaho average was what, 54?
The standard rate is 54, so I actually had an idea. So I was going to recommend, and depending on if you want to break it up into 3 again, we would have the standard rate of $54. Instead of doing an in-state, out-of-state, and a higher rate, we could maybe do a standard, a mid-rate, a higher, and then exceptional higher.
Yeah.
So we would have like a standard rate of $54, a mid-rate of $59, higher would be $69, and then DC would be $74.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think most of those, the only thing is we need to figure out how we will make sure people know what falls into what category. What qualifies as mid-rate and higher? Because mid-rate would be like Coeur d'Alene, higher would be Boise and Sun Valley right now.
I had kind of a aha to this. I had to do my Army travel, even though I'm not traveling in 2 weeks. I'm staying here, but I still have to go in and do it. I can get on my GSA, or just right here on the main GSA and just search.
That's what I did.
And I think really when people are submitting their per diem request to you guys, is they need to include this sheet with it. Because then they've actually went in and said, hey, and I just put Twin Falls for giggles. And it says meals and incidentals was $59 total. It has your lunch breakdown, first day of travel costs. And you can pull this out, and it even has a print option, because this is actually what I have to do in the military, is I actually have, it does it for me. I don't have to do it, but you hit the print button, it pulls it up, you print it out, it comes in here's your per diem rate for Twin Falls, Idaho, in your nice little thing, and you just put it in your sheet, because then you guys have all the information that's there. Then they should actually know as well when they're filling this out, that if they select the $79 rate and their sheet says $59, something's wrong.
So we would just have to clarify, don't include the incidental.
Yeah, don't include the incidental.
And then somehow modify this form, which is what we use right now.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that could be worked out.
Well, and it's something that gives you guys that, to where it puts the onus on the person filling the form out to make sure that it's correct for you guys. Because then you don't have the, hey, I selected the $74, the highest per diem rate, because I think I'm going to eat it all the big stuff, and I printed my sheet out, and my sheet said $54. So obviously something's wrong.
And we'll still have a handful of issues, because
I'm sure.
you'd be amazed at how difficult this form is to fill out for some people.
Yeah.
Okay,
Do
you want me to move forward with Carol's recommendation? Do you want to try and change to
I like
set rates?
I like Terrell's if that
Okay.
works for
I mean, you have your set rates, but you're just putting that form behind it.
I think that helps put the onus on the traveler. It makes it little easier on you so that you can see where
And
the
then let's tell
traveler
them they have
got
to
it.
attach it, even though, and this form might just absolutely need overhauled,
Yes.
because on this form, we let them know that per diem's only for overnight travel. They still request one meal. We tell them to attach insurance, they still don't attach it. So maybe we can just start from scratch, or maybe the clerk's group could send us what they use.
I could get that.
Yeah, and if there's
Okay.
new stuff that way, I mean, that's just,
And I would like to propose a change to our travel policy that we list allowable expenses for traveling on your card, one of
That's-
which is not meals.
That's where I'm going next.
Because I was doing some research over the weekend and realized that that is something that is lacking in our travel policy, and we need to put that in there. Airfare, travel, lodging should all be standard. Meals should be reimbursed either
Yes.
this way or bring in your receipts.
Okay, so let's keep that thought, and let me see what I address and what I don't address.
Okay.
We already have within our travel policy that if a meal is provided in the conference, you do not get reimbursed. So if you choose not to participate in the meal, like I always do at GFOA, then I'm on my own. So are we still good with that policy?
We should define that because For example, in my last conference, there was a meal in quotes, provided in the exhibitor hall versus the meal that was provided the next day in the main conference area. I wasn't aware of the meal in the conference or in the exhibitor hall, plus it was finger food snacks, not a
An actual meal.
So how could we define that to solve that issue?
And we address that same thing, so a lot of times, so that's a very good point, because a lot of times they'll say continental breakfast. We'll still give you breakfast if it's a continental breakfast, because a continental breakfast could be anything from a full spread to stale muffins and orange juice.
Or one of the, I won't say what conference we went to, but they were supposed to have dinner that night, and I was like, showed up right at 7, and by the time I was at the back of the line, by the time I got up, it was gone.
So on that note,
So I think I went to Taco Bell that night.
but on that note, how do we know? Because there's some conference
Conferences,
agendas
yes.
that define it, some don't. So if we pay people for meals before with the per
Right.
diem, in that case, they could come back and say, this was a joke, can you provide me lunch?
Right.
But if we prepay for something and then all of a sudden people get meals provided, it's really hard for us to know. Example, midwinter, you guys usually take the legislators to dinner.
Right.
Unless that's pre-planned, our office never knows about that unless you guys let us know what night you've planned that. So there needs to be some sort of, I don't know how we do it, but some sort of action so that we know when people have been provided meal. The other thing is what happens if we go to clerk's conference and one of the vendors decides to take us to dinner.
Right.
That happens a lot at the Road and Bridge Conference, is those guys usually don't do per diems because they get wined and dined the whole event. But we don't know that.
Well, and then there should be
So
a
it's an
question
honesty thing.
of, then there should be a question of, did you receive gifts in greater than $25 from any vendor?
I can tell you right now, I've been to one of those conferences and it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, how tight do you want it?
Well, and that's,
Is the
Yeah.
question.
Right.
I mean, we
There's
want
gotta
to
be
trust
trust,
people.
yeah.
There's a purpose to go to a conference. If they go and fulfill the purpose of the conference, we need to take care of them. If they're going on vacation, that's a whole different deal. I mean, it just, in my opinion, there's got to be a purpose for the conference.
well,
And if there is, then we should be getting something back out of that as a county. And if it's $100 that we're off, I don't, it's not a big deal to me.
So what if we put, if the meal is not, give me wording.
paid for in the conference fee.
No, I was trying to get back to the finger food thing.
Oh, yeah.
If meal is not, let me come up with something unless you come up with something and then kick it to me and we'll revise that within the policy. We'll just do an amendment because we need to redo our
What if-
accounting policy, but I don't have time. So we'll just do an amendment.
What if you just said something simply, if it's not in the main, if it's not part of the main conference? Like, in mine, it was part of the general session on Friday, lunch is provided during the general session. If it's in the exhibitor hall, that's not part of the main conference, and I think I went to the exhibitor hall on Saturday afternoon for a half hour, so I wouldn't have been aware, or something like that. But if it's part of the main conference, that's where it's
Well,
out.
and you see them, like, even at IAC, where you have the ones where, you know, you have the legislative finger food dinner at night, where it's every fried thing you can think of as being said. Well, it's good to eat.
Or you go to some of those meetings and it's by invitation only, but meal is provided. If you were scanning through, you might say, oh, there's lunch or dinner
Yeah,
provided.
but you had to
here.
be invited to
But it
the,
was a-
There was one, just like you're talking about, Jeff, that there are a lot of counties that use computer arts for a lot of different things in the clerk's office, and we don't. And so I didn't know that they had a dinner that I could have gone to, and they would have tried to sell us computer arts. But I just didn't know because I'm not in that group.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And it wasn't in the main hall like you're talking about.
So how about if meal is not part of conference, or I'll figure out a better word for substantive, I mean, of some substance, then reimbursement is allowed.
Yeah.
Please make special note And that's all we need to do is,
Right.
on those per diem forms, it's kind of like the Ubers that you took. All you've got to do is put, location is,
Out in the middle of the field.
thank you for saying that, because what I was gonna say was not what should be televised. They were initials.
Yeah.
Therefore, Ubers
Right.
to get a meal other than the same place for every single meal is required.
Right.
But if you make notes of stuff like that, then the public will, it's transparent. The public will know why we allowed it. And it also gives you guys the explanation for those individuals that try and turn in more things like that.
Right.
So will that work?
Yeah,
And
that's
then
good
we'll
to
just
know.
say if there's a circumstance outside the normal, please communicate with auditing, and we will note
Well, and,
the
and
exception
Communication and
for
receipts.
transparency.
the other thing
mean,
too is just, I would just put, and we word this a very specific way. So typically, the Department of Defense, mills will just, your per diem rate is given because they don't want to specify dietary requirements either due to personal beliefs or religious affiliations. Because a lot of times, a lot of meals aren't prepared in certain ways. And so there's a lot of stuff, that's why the Department of Defense has just went, we don't care if there's meals provided, if there's a chow hall installation, if there's somewhere you can go eat, that's there, you don't get a per diem for it. But if there's not somewhere out on the thing, even if you're going to a conference or something like that, they just give you the meal rate, and they have a reduced meal rate because then it's up to you for dietary need, is what they say.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, because that just is probably the easiest way to say it,
Okay,
without asking people, well, why?
great.
It's not, you know,
Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll try and put something together and then bring it back and have you review,
yeah.
once we get done with all this. The other item I had on conferences was extracurricular events. So like at my GFOA conference, there is a closing event that normally costs like $45. You guys at IAC in September are gonna have a cornhole tournament. Is that something that we pay for? Is that, in the past, we really haven't allowed those because they are optional. I see the value in them because you can network at them.
That's it right there. There's a purpose for going to the conference. And if it's part of the conference, then it's part of the package deal to me.
I think the cornhole is also going to a good cause. It's for the scholarship fund, right? Whereas if, like the clerks always do, golf one night, and that shouldn't be paid for.
Yeah.
Like,
Going to the
let's-
baseball game, that's on you.
let's talk about
You're
that.
going to the
Yeah,
hockey
right.
game.
Going to the hockey game, that's
Well,
on
no,
you.
We do that all the time in Boise, is we get group tickets, but we do it all
But
on
that's
our
not
first
part of
time.
the conference.
Yeah, it's not part of it.
Right.
Well, we done at the hockey games. That's not
Right.
part of the
Well,
conference.
but like, I don't know.
But
you
if
consider
it's on the
I
agenda,
would argue the golf as part of the conference. For example, at the IAC or not the IAC, the NACO one, they had a river rafting thing, and I didn't participate in it, but that was on the agenda as part of the conference. Last year, it was a bike ride. You could rent a bike and participate in this group bike ride.
I
See,
think,
If
to
it
me,
comes
that's-
out on
that's
the
like
flyer,
golf tournament.
If it's an organized, if
That's
it is
part of
an
the conference.
organized event, if it's an organized something, that's where you're gonna have this weird discussion, because, and if there's a fee attached to it, and then I think you just cap the fee. If the fee's more than $25, $50 to participate in something like that, you don't do it, because I've seen some of those, when they had the Weir, one year, they had it, at, where was I looking at? I think it was the one in Las Vegas. I didn't end up going that, I was stuck in BOE, but when we looked at it, there was all these things you could sign up, and they had like the Hoover Dam thing, and it was like a $75 out and back and whatever, and that's what I'm saying is you just put a simple,
well,
you know.
the other part about that is usually, like that one, you gotta go a day earlier.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if you're adding 2 or 3 days to the conference
Yeah.
for
so if
them,
it's part of the main conference timeframe,
I don't know.
That would be a good way to, that'd be a good way to
That's
define
probably a better
it.
way. If your conference is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and your golf is Tuesday night as part of it, okay. But if the golf is Thursday, probably not, because that would require you to stay an extra day for something that would be outside of the normal.
The other thing that, and everybody's gonna kind of throw rocks at me on this, but this is the first thing it needs to say, because I have to fill this out every time I do my travel voucher for the federal government. Is this conference offered virtually? And if it is, yes, you better have a really good justification of why you need to go to it then. And I just hate to say that, but in this day and age, there's a lot of stuff that we have. Now, there's very simple things that you can say, is when you go to some of the clerks, the IECs, the GFOA, I mean, there's reasons why you're there in person, and that's definitely understandable. But when especially if it's a training type event, like a specific, almost like a classroom setting, and it's going to be a huge difference in cost, why are we doing that? You know what I mean?
I can add an area for that and just put virtual versus live conference. You need to get prior approval for
Yes.
live. How's
Yes.
that?
Because that's one of the things that there's a lot of these, especially when it's, and I'm looking at it more so not just a conference, it's more of a training event involved. If you're going to just learn, and that's the whole point, and the class is offered virtually and it's the same class, why are we spending 5 days down there with hotels, travel, and all that other stuff? Now, I understand that if it needs to happen that way, because maybe there's a reason specifically for
But
that,
then
and you
you
put that down.
rationalize it.
And you rationalize it, but it makes people think it out of, oh, hey, I can go, where are we going this year? No.
Yeah.
that's not-
Jason, what is your golf cost on that? Just
So we do it every year, and we've always just paid for it out of pocket, and we always, Sheree and I are typically in charge of it, and we'll find the best, cheapest option where we can get a deal. It's typically $35 to $50 for a round. We don't golf
I like the cap, if it's within the frame.
less than $50.
Less than $50, or we'll reimburse you up to $50, and if you wanna go more than that,
What
we
if
can do
you,
that.
on that, maybe it's who you pay too. So if you're paying a golf course, it's not part of the conference.
If you're paying the
But if you're
association.
paying the association, it's part of the conference. That might also
Yeah,
assist with knowing what is truly a part of it versus what's
that's a
not.
great metric, I think.
Yeah,
I agree.
I like that.
Okay. The other item was Uber rides, and I think those in some instances, whatever, situations, are appropriate, but in some they may not be. So how do we want to, do we even want to address that?
So,
Or,
Well, when I went to Vegas, when I used a taxi to come in
Mhm.
town, and then I used Uber, and Uber was half the price of the taxi ride.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's on deals that you don't really know until you
Well,
make contact with them, and
Uber has switched to a demand model, so depending on the time of day and
Oh, yeah.
volume, the price could triple. For example, on this last one, when I went from Denver Airport to the hotel, it was, I think, $29. When I pre-booked it to come home, it was $55. I found a ride with somebody, so I didn't have to pay that. So the Uber thing is very variable right now.
Well-
They've been doing that for last year.
a lot of times too is you can just give a transportation cap, whether it's, and.
But you never know though,
But-
just
Yeah.
like that, you
Yeah.
never
Well,
know.
but again, you're going to justify up to,
well, and it's easy if you're going from the hotel to
To
the
the
airport
airport.
and back.
Yep.
Those are given costs, but I'm talking more of, say we go to Boise and we're stuck at the Riverside and we want to go downtown and eat. And for whatever reason, I don't have a car. I want to take an Uber. Is that allowed? Or,
so that's why typically you'll see DOD in their policies, and this is why they addressed it, is they just have a $25 up to a day. And if you use it. You usually have your transportation costs of, hey, it did cost $55 from the airport to this, and you're required to have that. And what they're saying is that up to 25 doesn't require justification, but
so
does
if I
require
wanna
the
go
receipt.
shopping, then,
If you have 25,
County will pay for
you have
Uber.
$25 inside your county, or however you set it. Hey, I want to take an Uber and I want to go down and eat. I'm at the Riverside and there is food inside the Riverside. Can you do it for $25?
and that was not a great example.
Well, I know,
because
but that happens. But that happens though, and the justification is.
let's
you know.
let's just not even address this right
Okay.
now, the Uber.
Okay.
Let's see what it comes and becomes.
See if it ever, okay.
I
We
really
don't use Uber all that often. That's the.
We don't, it's just when you do the bigger cities, and so like, I was fortunate in Austin because I could walk anywhere. And then I got on scooters just to play, but that was personal. But you go to Aurora and you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't want to eat at the same fast food, whatever place option you have, so you need to go a little ways.
I think we ought to talk about this, the Uber thing, in our next elected officials meeting.
Need a work
probably,
session
because I
on it.
feel like if I send one of my clerks somewhere and I don't go, so let's say Christy goes to GFOA training, I'm the one that signs off on that. And so I should be asking her about, well, why do you have this Uber? And if I signed off on it, then okay, it was justified to come before the board.
Yeah.
And every single elected official should be looking at those and questioning close enough, because we're sending good people that we should be able to trust to do the right thing.
And then it takes time for you guys too.
Well, and you have just some basic standards that if you have, and that's what I was getting at, was just have a basic, hey, you turn in Uber receipts of $500 on a trip, and we're going to have probably a discussion about stuff. You have a one-time Uber, of like when I was in DC and I had to get to the airport, it cost me $61.
Well, I think in that same discussion, we need to have our conversation and what our actual policies are on mileage. Because we need to come up to the rate on mileage where we should be, but we need to have the procedures and policies in place of when we pay mileage and when we don't. And I think it's the same time. type of
Yeah, I
conversation.
agree,
Yes,
100%.
Let me pick this up a little bit because we're not done. Flight upgrades, that's always been a no-no.
No.
That
Yep.
should be-
Flights on your own.
that
Comfort
should be out
and
of
no
the-
first class.
that
So-
should
Flights
be-
on your own.
Okay,
Yep,
perfect.
if you want to upgrade, that's on you.
And we've never addressed, we don't have that in policy, I just kind of thought it was a no-brainer, but we'll address that.
It's,
That should be.
But it has been practiced. Okay, the other item, if you guys are good on that, is purchases. So we have been receiving a lot of employees that are wanting reimbursements as opposed to using the county credit card, just because it's so much easier. I'm not housed here.
No
That-
purchases on your personal credit card unless prior authorization from your elected official is given first.
That's what I would love to see.
Or an emergency.
Or an emergency. And,
Okay.
and the emergency isn't, hey, it was a really good sell. It was, hey, the building's on fire and my county credit card's melting, so I had to use mine.
Right.
Okay. So and the reason I'm bringing this up is we've had a couple situations where we had an employee that had a purchase, and I think I brought it to you last week, but she had a purchase for a desk, turned in the reimbursement request, never notified us that it had been canceled.
Yeah.
And when we asked for a delivery receipt, she let us know then at that point. That same individual has turned in multiple reimbursements.
Weekly.
And it's hard to track duplicates also because there's no tracking system with invoices or that kind of stuff. So thank you for that. We also have had a couple employees purchase from Amazon personally, and I think those should go through Shanda.
yes.
The other item I would like to request from employees is if you're going to order something, it be delivered to the courthouse or work, not your personal address.
Yes.
Okay.
And your personal stuff doesn't get delivered here.
I don't think we've seen that lately since we've had a
It's
few
been a while, but
employee turnovers.
we used to have some people that,
Yeah.
wow, all these Amazon boxes, it's
She's
amazing.
not here anymore. Okay.
So, Braden, we need to get an elected officials meeting, and then we need, right after that,
How long
have
do you need to put those stuff
an
together?
elected official plus supervisors
Can we do it
meeting, so that everybody hears these things. We can talk to the elected officials first
Yeah.
for an hour or something, and then bring everybody in the
I
next
agree.
hour, so that it's spread throughout all the leadership.
Any time frame specifically you want me to
I was
look
just
for?
talking to Christy about that, and she made a suggestion in a couple of weeks after the clerks conference, so we can get some updated information from them.
When's the clerk's conference?
The week of the 15th.
Yeah, it's the week of the 15th.
So I was thinking the 1st of September.
Okay.
Oh, perfect.
I mean,
And
Terrell's gone, I'm gone for the next week and a half, and then Terrell's gone for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So it should be the 1st of September.
That'd be great.
And I'll try and put some rough stuff together, have Jason review it. Once he's good with it, then I'll kick it to maybe Braden and Jeff to just do a quick overview and see if there's anything I'm missing or far off base on or you want to add.
Well, you can send it individually to us anyway,
Okay. That'll
Yeah.
work. Okay.
so that we all look at it.
Perfect.
That was very painless.
All right,
Keep playing.
Shanda.
Shonda Crystal, Purchasing and Economic Analyst, and I'm here with,
Hal Jensen, Planning and Development Director.
I've asked Hal here to help give an update on where we are with the water, the main line rupture out of the jail system from yesterday to today.
Real quickly, for those that know, if you want a historical synopsis, had a fire south of the jail. In the process of fighting the fire, they drained the main fire sprinkler supply to the jail. At the process that they finished fighting the fire, then when they went to set the system back to equilibrium, that dry line was then charged. And rather than apparently slowly charged, it was fully charged, meaning they just opened the valve and let it come, and the water hammer blew a 3-inch hole in the side of the 8-inch fire sprinkler supply line under the slab of the boiler room at the jail. Levi worked furiously on Friday night to get that issue resolved with the City of Pocatello. The City of Pocatello Water Department came. It is deemed a private line, but the City of Pocatello was very courteous about getting a crew out. JAG Enterprise responded as well. They were able to remove a section of the floor, get the water turned off. City of Pocatello supplied a patch to the line on a temporary basis. Just so that everybody knows, there's 4 foundation walls. There was so much water that it was contained like a bathtub, and the only place it had to go was up. And we have about a 6-inch hump in the middle of the boiler room floor, which has raised the boilers and other equipment. Needless to say, Friday night they were able to get Rocky Mountain Boiler to respond. They came and took care of the issues that they could, as well as correcting any leaks on gas lines that occurred from the uplift of the floor, which then put kinks in joints and other aspects. At this point, Sheriff Manu contacted me on Saturday because he could not have peace of mind that the building was safe. And I went out with Chase Clark on Saturday. We looked at the facility. We were able to determine that all life safety measures had been corrected and that it was safe to inhabit and function in the building, meaning the jail in general, and that those life safety systems were functioning. We then met, I then contacted Commissioner Tuvey, told him the situation. He gave me a verbal to go ahead and contact other people for a meeting on Monday morning at 10. We met with a structural engineer, a mechanical engineer who did the original mechanical design and did some investigation. Commissioner Tuvey was there, Commissioner Moser, you were there, and you know the situation at hand. At that point, yesterday afternoon, I was able to get a hold of one of 3 contractors that would respond. One responded and said that they would not even be available for the next 45 days and couldn't even look at it, period. And it's very specialty relative to commercial contractors, rather than just any guy that we would call off the street as a handyman. This is very technical because of the amount of equipment that we have to remove and either replace or temporarily put back into function while they remove this floor, remove the saturated soils, rebuild everything below, pour a new slab, place new equipment. The contractor that responded is Star Corporation. They are still in the process of working through their numbers to try to get everything potentially put together so that we could enter into a contract with them for emergency response to get this corrected. They are available to start with a crew Monday of next week. So we've been able to secure a fee and a schedule from Paul Bastian, structural engineer. Dwayne Sedgwick's the original mechanical engineer of the facility when it was originally built, responded. He's in the process of putting together his hourly rates for time and material. Star is doing the same. They have made contact with Rocky Mountain Boiler, who did the original install of the boiler system, who has always maintained the system, and we're not reinventing. So anyway, long story short, all of the players at this point are in place, pending your decision here today, just so that you know. Shanda has some of that information and has been in contact with all of those people at this point, ready to put other contracts or agreements in place. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer, but that's the situation in a nutshell. And it's one of the most interesting things I've ever been exposed to from a catastrophe. The fact that walls didn't move out, but the floor moved up, still leaves me
I don't know how we
scratching my
did-
head.
I don't know how we
Interesting
didn't lose the back
phenomenon.
of the jail.
And I think it's humped more than 6 inches.
Oh, it probably. There's some areas that were like, man.
That's crazy.
And just as a comment, Levi is worth his weight in gold. That just blew me away what he was able to accomplish in such a short time to keep that facility as large as it is and what needed to be done. What he was able to accomplish Friday night is just, I'm still, once again, scratching my head at what has taken place so far.
On your end, what about the insurance, what about?
Yeah, so it's pretty typical for us to have ICRIM pay rather than us pay and then get reimbursed. So really from the process that we follow, we don't have to do anything special, we just follow our normal process. We just need to get the invoices and as we would with any other accident or.
Is ICRIMP gonna, they'll cover everything and we've made sure, do they need pictures? This could be a fairly large bill.
I don't know that answer to that.
If you'll just make sure with them that they're not gonna require anything outside of the ordinary on this.
Okay.
Because we don't wanna go disturb it even more and send pictures halfway through construction. I mean, I think we already have enough before pictures, but
The person in our area that like came to the museum, he's out right now. So
Okay.
we're trying to, see.
Okay.
I'm positive they're gonna want eyes on it.
Okay.
So
I's dotted and T's crossed.
Do we have any
That's all I'm
claim
saying.
against whoever turned the water on the way they did?
Pardon?
Do we have any claim against whoever turned the water on the way they did?
So I think ICRIMP would investigate and figure out exactly, I think this is what we are guessing,
no.
anticipated to happen, but that ICRIMP would follow up and investigate.
Okay.
and follow up.
what they will ask for is any documentation you have. And as that becomes available, if you can give that to me, I'll forward it on to them and be a point of contact.
And as a comment, Shannon, I don't know if you were aware that there are cameras in the boiler room.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Levi pointed them out. So I am guessing once ICRIMP gets the individual back in the office, that's something that they'll request of the sheriff's office.
Okay.
Would be deputy ordinance available.
Yeah.
So, let's go ahead. The contract,
So the first next step is the declaration of
okay.
emergency.
Well, and that's what I was trying to clarify. Because we'd already talked about the contract with
Paul?
Paul.
Mhm.
Is that,
Well, we have two
is
contracts.
that separate? Yeah.
Yeah, so
From
Paul
the
has,
emergency.
Paul has services that we were already set in place before the jail happened, after meeting last week of, if you provide services of engineering towards planning and zoning. That's the first contract we need, and we forgot to have that done during Hal's time. We need that signed there, but then Paul's fees would also be then carried over into this as well.
But if this is going to be an insurance claim, we won't pay him.
No,
The
but-
contract will, essentially, the
But
insurance will pay him. and
We should
won't.
sign the contract first,
We still have to have
declare the
Paul.
emergency.
Paul,
Or,
Right.
okay, then
Yes.
the resolution for
the resolution for,
Well,
so for this, we have to
Don't we want
have,
to ratify his contract first,
That's what
Yes.
I was,
then do the resolution for
Yes.
the emergency, which then justifies,
yes,
oh, yeah.
using
Okay,
him.
that's
Yes.
the process that I was
yes.
Okay.
trying to think.
Because we're using Paul for other stuff, just not the jail stuff. And so that was what was supposed to be done. We weren't planning on having a jail issue when we put this on the agenda on Tuesday, or on Friday. So,
But the other work that he does.
Yes,
just
it'll-
to
this-
Clarify what's associated with normal, which I need a
Yes.
W-9 from him, please.
yes.
But we'll have to clarify what's jail-related to this, because we'll just kick that to ICRIM
Yep.
once a claim's been filed.
Have we filed it already, or
It's getting
Not
going.
yet.
not yet?
They'll have to have their inspector come through and walk at it. They're not gonna pay anything this big without having somebody,
All right, so let's go through the contract first.
yep. for Paul.
And that's the backside of this one, correct?
So Paul should have been attached to Hal's
House stuff that
request.
should be in house.
Yeah.
We forgot to get it done when we did, when we signed the flood thing.
It's not in my packet, so it must be in the paper there.
Sure, and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying,
Where did Paul's?
this one,
That other one that you have should be
professional
for-
services,
Right, but it should be with Engineering Service Associates. That second line.
engineering services.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
okay,
not
that's it.
all.
Okay,
Not,
That's mechanical engineer
Yeah.
That's
for the
Sedgwick.
jail.
okay,
so
so
that'll be after we do the resolution.
Okay, but I didn't, sorry.
I don't see Paul's.
Can I go get it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I wanted to make sure we was doing. All right. And while she's doing that, we can go through the other resolutions. So that,
Make sure we have this all the right way.
all right, so we have resolution number 2022-63, tax cancellation request.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we approve resolution 2022-63 as presented.
Have a motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next, we have, in the matter of June 2022 Commissioners' Proceedings.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we approve the June 22 Commissioner proceedings.
Okay, and then
Declaration of
on the
emergency.
consent agenda, we have alcohol license, Mama Inez and Buddies. We also have certificate of residency approval. And then we have minutes from July 19th, 21st, and 26th.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion, all in favor say aye.
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 We have the emergency resolution, so we can do that. It's not that one. That's a fairly straightforward one. Oh, Jason, sorry.
My only question is procedurally, do we want to sign the engineering contract first before we do the declaration? Or does it matter?
So the engineering contract that was before us was actually not for the emergency. It was not
Correct.
related. So we can do
Correct.
either one in.
But he's charging us that rate during the emergency.
Yeah, and the emergency would be said because we had to have somebody out on, I mean, you could do it either way.
I just didn't know if there was a
Yeah.
procedural difference in doing it one way or the other.
I'd like to sign the contract first and then do the emergency afterwards.
You can do it.
So that it just,
Contract
It doesn't-
for Planning
yeah.
and zoning services.
Yeah. Because our planning and zoning services contract was already on the agenda and supposed to, and the rate fee, Paul had actually given us Friday, and that was supposed to be brought here today to be done, but the whole jail just kind of really threw it.
Blew up.
It
The
blew
jail
up.
blew up.
Blew up.
Blew up.
I said it's a recess. Oh,
There she comes.
there we go. Excel engineering. Yep, this is the one that has all of his rate fees. And so he'll have all of this, and this is what we want for,
The emergency.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the professional services agreement with Excel Engineering as presented.
have a motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now let's move on to the emergency, the declaration.
So then, due to the risk of safety to health, life, and property, there is a resolution before the board to declare this an emergency. And this would allow us to procure goods and services at the best that the county can do based on time to retain that health, safety, and property that we have the damage to.
And that property being the Bannock County Jail.
Okay, yeah, detention center, yep.
Okay.
So this is resolution 2022-64.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve resolution 2022-64 as presented.
Have a motion, all in favor say aye.
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 We gotta hurry up and get the heat turned on. We're laughing because it's gonna be 103 on Sunday, but it's gonna be cold really quick here.
Fair's here and football's practice starts, so.
Yep.
All right. The next,
So I did have another contract before the board, the Engineer Service Associates. Based on Hal's recommendation, we would like to wait until they can turn in time and materials costs to the board. The contract was built without it due to the emergency, and I needed something before the board to move forward. But it would add more detail, similar to the Excel engineering
Hold it till,
as they.
well, I feel like we just did the resolution, so anything that comes before us associated with this afterwards, we've kind of already approved that we need to take care of it. That's what.
Yep.
Okay. And I do have an item before the board on Thursday as well, in regards to these contracts, in hopes of getting the Star Corporation's one, as well as those time and material with ESA before the board. There will be additional invoicing, smaller bits and projects to shore up that wall, to be able to, the Rocky Mountain boilers, things like that, that will come as invoices. But again, right, all of those will be funneled through HR to be appropriately processed and moved through the system.
okay.
All right. Good. All right. Now we have an executive session with Hal.